The new memories crashed into his consciousness, a tidal wave of someone else's life. He died at his desk, a heart attack born from caffeine and deadlines, only to wake up inside a true crime thriller he'd once read for kicks. Now he was Leo, the charismatic player at the center of a brutal crime of passion, the one who ended up in pieces. And outside the door, the architect of that crime was waiting. A soft knock, then a voice, gentle and melodic. It was a lover's greeting, full of warmth, a stark contrast to the silver gleam of the knife he knew was hidden behind the speaker's back. The knocking came again, a steady, patient rhythm like a drumbeat signaling his own execution. It worked its way under his skin, a slow-motion horror film score playing out in real time. He remembered the book's description of the arrest. Police breaking down a door into a darkened apartment, the air thick with a coppery, nauseating stench. The killer, Caleb, was found there, skeletal and gaunt, his frame looking like a monster barely contained by its human skin. Long bangs had obscured his eyes, leaving only a sharp chin and a single dark mole beside his lips visible as he continued his grotesque meal, unbothered by the intrusion. The image had made the arresting officers physically ill. Thinking of it now, a cold dread prickled across Leo's own skin. He loved reading thrillers, but he had never wanted a starring role. He was so consumed by panic that he didn't realize the knocking had stopped. The sudden silence was worse. His heart hammered against his ribs as he pressed his eye back to the peephole. Caleb was fumbling in his messenger bag, pulling out a key. A raw, obviously copied key. He'd been planning this. There was no escape. A strange, fatalistic courage took hold. With a surge of adrenaline, Leo wrenched the door open. Caleb, key in hand, froze, his eyes widening in surprise. Before he could react, Leo pulled him into a desperate, crushing hug. Caleb was thin, all sharp angles under his worn hoodie, and he smelled faintly of clean laundry. Leo's legs were trembling with terror, but his arms held Caleb tight, a vice grip of feigned affection. He buried his face in Caleb's shoulder and managed to get the words out, telling Caleb how much he'd missed him. The whole relationship, as the novel had explained, started as a joke, a dare at a party. The challenge had been to date Caleb, the campus ghost, for 1 month. Caleb was the definition of an outcast, withdrawn, friendless, with a posture that seemed to fold in on itself and a pale complexion that rarely saw the sun. A perpetual gloom hung about him. Leo's predecessor had won the bet easily, then continued to cheat and lie for the duration of their month together. The murder had happened when he tried to end it. Caleb couldn't accept the breakup. Held in Leo's arms, Caleb remained stiff for a moment before his own hands came up to rest on Leo's back, his fingers tracing the line of his spine as if measuring him. The thought of what those hands were capable of sent a fresh wave of nausea through him. Caleb's voice was a low murmur against his ear, asking if Leo had really missed him, reminding him that he had broken up with him just last night. Leo shook his head violently, insisting it was a mistake. He declared that he didn't want to break up, that he'd realized he was still in love. He took it all back. Proposing a breakup to this man was a death sentence. Caleb was silent for a long moment. Leo's palms were slick with cold sweat. Finally, Caleb agreed that it was wonderful they weren't breaking up. Leo's knees almost buckled in relief. He quickly suggested they head to class, desperate to be in a public place, away from the suffocating intimacy of the apartment. He grabbed Caleb's hand, a gesture of casual ownership that felt completely alien. He was too focused on his own survival to notice Caleb's startled, almost rigid reaction, as if it were a touch he had never experienced before. The lecture hall, bustling with students, felt like a sanctuary. Leo finally exhaled, finding a seat in the back row. He was confused when Caleb didn't sit next to him, instead choosing a spot several seats away. Though fear still coiled in his gut, he forced himself to walk over and ask Caleb why he wasn't sitting with him. Caleb mumbled that Leo had told him to act like they didn't know each other at school. The memory surfaced. The original Leo had been deeply ashamed of Caleb. His proximity prompted whispers from nearby students, their voices carrying in the quiet room. One asked Leo what he was doing talking to that guy. Another marveled that the class weirdo had somehow made a friend. The consensus was that Leo must just be taking pity on him. Caleb seemed oblivious to the comments, his head bowed, his hair a curtain hiding his face. The original Leo had never understood the depths of the madness he was toying with. To survive, Leo knew he had to crush that madness with a new reality. He took Caleb's hand again, lacing their fingers together, and shot a glare at the onlookers. He stated firmly that it wasn't pity, that Caleb was his boyfriend and he loved him. The whispers died instantly. Students stared, mouths agape, before awkwardly turning back to their notebooks. When Leo looked at Caleb, he found him staring intently. His lips pressed into a thin line, the mole at the corner of his mouth standing out against his pale skin. Leo's stomach clenched, but he pushed on, admitting he'd been wrong before and insisting they would sit together from now on. Caleb's head dropped even lower, his expression unreadable. After a tense pause, he asked if Leo was sure. Upon receiving a firm confirmation, Caleb's breathing grew ragged, his grip on Leo's hand tightening with an unnerving, excited strength. He whispered Leo's name, a sound full of desperate possession. Leo remembered his predecessor reacting to that name with violence, hitting Caleb so hard he'd bled. Caleb had never used it again until now. Leo could only nod, his own voice a faint echo. During the lecture, Caleb was a poor student, his notebook filled with frantic scribbles while his gaze kept darting over to Leo. It was almost pathetic. He had no family, no friends, and the one person who showed him affection was only doing it as a cruel game. Caleb might have been socially inept, but he wasn't stupid. He must have known about the cheating. He had simply allowed it, treasuring the false affection he was given. Leo felt a brief, unwelcome pang of sympathy before reminding himself that he was the one whose life was on the line. After their single morning class, he took Caleb to a diner. It was the lunch rush, and the Greasy Spoon was the only place near campus with an open booth. Caleb's skin was almost translucent, the blue veins at his wrist a stark road map. His eyes, dark and fixated on Leo, were wide with a kind of shining adoration. He confessed that this was the first time Leo had ever taken him out to eat, and his happiness was palpable. It was true. The original relationship had been built on a few texts and empty promises. Leo hadn't even bought him a cup of coffee. He gave a hollow laugh, promising there would be many more meals together. Caleb was unervingly attentive, cutting Leo's burger in half for him, making sure his napkin was within reach. He would have fed him bite by bite if Leo hadn't firmly refused. Caleb handled his own silverware with a practiced, elegant grace, the mole on his lip bobbing with each chew. The sight sent a jolt of revulsion through Leo, the image from the novel, of Caleb eating something far more gruesome, superimposing itself over the diner scene. His stomach churned. Apologizing abruptly, he bolted for the restroom and retched into a toilet bowl. Caleb knocked on the stall door, his voice laced with concern, asking what was wrong. Leo claimed it was nothing, but the sound of Caleb's voice was now a trigger for both fear and nausea. He was just an ordinary guy. Dealing with a psychopath was far beyond his pay grade. When he emerged, he pretended to feel unwell, hoping to end the date. Caleb offered to take care of him, but Leo refused, forcing his hand not to shake as he patted Caleb's head. He spun a lie about not wanting to burden him, telling him to be good and that he just needed to rest. Caleb's disappointment vanished, replaced by a radiant smile. He promised to be good, his eyes wet with affection. It was disturbingly easy to pacify him. Being with Caleb was a constant state of high alert. Finally alone, Leo felt like he could breathe again. He walked to a different neighborhood and got a slice of pizza. While he waited, he scrolled through the phone, the digital ghost of his new identity. It was worse than he thought. Over 1,000 contacts, a sea of handsome men and beautiful women, his sent messages filled with crude, explicit propositions. It was a miracle he hadn't been reported. He deleted them all, a mass digital execution. Then he found the chat history with Caleb. Before they were together, it was a one-sided pursuit. Afterward, it was a stream of messages from Caleb met with Leo's cold replies or outright insults. The only message Caleb hadn't replied to was yesterday's breakup text. A flicker of guilt, not his own but a remnant of this body, pricked at him. He typed out a message, adopting the persona of the man he was pretending to be. He called Caleb baby and told him to rest up for their date tomorrow. The reply was instantaneous. A cascade of messages flooded the screen, Caleb exclaiming how happy he was, professing his love over and over. Leo typed back that he loved him too, adding a heart emoji. Caleb responded with a dozen more hearts, as if trying to convey an emotion too big for words. Leo sighed and shut the phone off. He wandered the city until nightfall, too afraid to return to the apartment that was supposed to be a crime scene. He decided to get a hotel room for the night and figure out a more permanent solution later. On his way, a voice called his name. A young man with subtle makeup and a crop top that showed off a sliver of waist detached himself from the crowd spilling out of a nightclub. He draped himself over Leo, pouting. He demanded to know why Leo hadn't come out tonight and, glancing at the hotel, accused him of meeting someone else. He insisted on going back to Leo's place. Leo tried to refuse, but the man made a scene, clinging to him, his hands roaming. He was about to kiss him when Leo, out of options, let himself be dragged into a cab. Back at the apartment building, he blocked the doorway, refusing to let the man in. As they argued, a cold draft swept through the stairwell. Leo looked up. The motion sensor light on the landing was broken. In the dim moonlight filtering through a grimy window, a figure stood on the stairs above them, a motionless sculpture of shadow. The moonlight stretched its silhouette, casting it over Leo like a shroud. Caleb had been standing there watching for who knows how long. He tilted his head, his red lips parting. He asked if this was Leo's husband, too. A clap of thunder echoed as lightning flashed, illuminating the stairwell in a stark, clinical white. Rain began to pour, and the air grew thick with humidity. Leo was frozen, caught in Caleb's dead-eyed stare. The terror was absolute, a spider crawling up his spine. The other man, startled, asked who Caleb was. Caleb didn't answer. He descended the stairs, and as he straightened from his usual slump, he was suddenly half a head taller than Leo. His fingers brushed against Leo's, a spark of excitement in his eyes. He asked if this new person was also Leo's boyfriend, if they were going to sleep together. He then offered to join them, his voice innocent, adding that he and Leo hadn't done anything like that yet. Leo was horrified. He clapped a hand over Caleb's mouth, hissing at the insane proposition. Caleb was a ticking bomb. He shoved Caleb inside the apartment and turned to the man in the hallway. He told him they were over, that he had a boyfriend now, and that he should leave and never come back. Ignoring the man's wounded expression, he slammed the door shut. He reached for the light switch but stopped. A tiny red light was blinking from the bookshelf across the room. He was certain it hadn't been there this morning. Caleb had been inside his apartment. He'd planted a camera. But why today, after a month of dating? It felt less like surveillance and more like he was planning to record an event. The only event on the schedule was Leo's murder. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Caleb had never intended to let him go. Caleb's soft voice broke the silence, asking what was wrong. Leo's face was ashen. He could just make out Caleb's silhouette against the window, his expression unreadable, but his gaze was a palpable weight. The sheer predatory stillness of it made Leo's blood run cold. Survival instinct took over. As Caleb took a small step back, Leo launched himself forward, grabbing Caleb's neck and kissing him. Caleb stiffened for a second, then melted into it, returning the kiss with a ferocity that stole Leo's breath. The world narrowed to the sound of their ragged breathing and the storm raging outside. They were a portrait of passionate lovers, locked in an embrace of pure desperation. Leo maneuvered them toward the bedroom, pushing Caleb onto the bed and breaking the kiss. Caleb's hair was a mess, revealing a strikingly beautiful face. His dark eyes glazed with a desire that was terrifying. He looked like a demon wearing the face of an innocent. Then Leo saw it, a pale, jagged scar on his forehead. His fingers moved to it instinctively. Caleb blinked, then a blissful smile spread across his face. He explained that Leo had done that to teach him a lesson, and he knew Leo only did it because he loved him. The words were a punch to the gut. Leo felt sick. He finally understood the depth of the damage his predecessor had inflicted. He sighed, his voice hoarse. He told Caleb that wasn't love. Love, he said, was about protection, not harm. Caleb just stared, uncomprehending, then leaned in for another kiss. Leo held him back. He traced the line of Caleb's jaw, his thumb brushing over the full, red lips. He asked in a low, seductive whisper if Caleb wanted to do more than just kiss. Caleb's pupils dilated. He asked what Leo meant. The goal was to distract, to control, to prove his own value while keeping Caleb wanting more. He leaned in and kissed the tip of Caleb's nose. Caleb arched his neck, trying to meet his lips, but Leo gently pushed him back down, his hands beginning a slow, calculated exploration. The cool rain outside was a counterpoint to the rising heat in the room, filled with the sound of Caleb's breathless whispers of love and encouragement. He called Leo amazing, called him husband. The last word, drawn out and musical, flipped a switch in Leo. He lost control. Later, Caleb was insatiable, clinging to him, but Leo held him off, promising to teach him something even better next time, but explaining that it was late and they needed to sleep. Caleb immediately complied. He then asked, with a childlike earnestness, if Leo would do these better things with other people. Leo, caught off guard, quickly promised he would only do them with him. This pleased Caleb immensely. He buried his face in Leo's chest, murmuring how good Leo was to him. Leo thought about how Caleb could seem like a demon one moment and a naive child the next, a paradox held in a terrifying, delicate balance. The next day, Leo bought scar removal cream and began applying it to Caleb's forehead every day. Caleb seemed overwhelmed by the gesture, accustomed only to neglect and abuse. They started acting like a real couple, attending classes together, going on dates. Caleb grew more dependent, more attached. Leo didn't know if this was a good thing, but at least, for now, the immediate threat of murder seemed to have subsided. On the 4th of July, he took Caleb to the local carnival. The riot of sounds and colors was a stark contrast to Caleb's quiet world. He hesitated at the entrance. Leo explained it was a carnival, a place for fun. Caleb admitted he'd never been to one. Leo confessed it was his first time too. His own childhood had been a frantic scramble for survival, with no room for such frivolities. The atmosphere was infectious. They ate cotton candy and rode the tilt-a-whirl. As dusk fell, they found themselves at the top of the Ferris wheel, overlooking the glittering fairgrounds. Fireworks began to explode in the distance. Caleb watched, his face glowing in the intermittent bursts of light, a look of pure wonder on his face. Leo pulled out a small bag of saltwater taffy he'd bought, wishing him a happy 4th. He told him that after eating the candy, life would be sweet. Caleb's eyes softened. He took a piece, a small, genuine smile gracing his lips. He said he'd never really celebrated a holiday before, and that it felt good. A strange sense of satisfaction washed over Leo. Caleb asked if they could come back again, his voice small, asking if Leo would leave him. It was a loaded question. Leo immediately promised they could come whenever he wanted, that he would never leave him. As long as you don't kill me, he added silently. Of all the characters in the novel, Caleb was the one who had stuck with him. Perhaps because their pasts rhymed. Leo had been a pawn in his parents' bitter divorce, tossed back and forth between two new families that had no room for him. The book had sketched Caleb's history in sparse, brutal detail. An orphan abandoned by his parents, adopted and returned multiple times by families drawn to his pretty face but repelled by his abnormal nature. He had never known love, only rejection. Then someone had appeared, claiming to love him. Even if it was a lie, it was all he had. To be with Caleb was easy. To leave him was impossible. He reached out and stroked Caleb's hair. He told him again, this time with more conviction, that the people who were good to you were the ones who loved you, not the ones who hurt you. Caleb simply nodded, his dark eyes fixed on Leo's face. Before Leo could ask what he was thinking, Caleb leaned in and kissed him. The taste of sugar filled his mouth. When Caleb pulled back, Leo found a piece of taffy had been slipped onto his tongue. Caleb was beaming, a real, dazzling smile that reached his eyes for the first time. He said that now Leo would be sweet, too. Leo's breath caught. He felt a strange thumping in his chest, a frantic drumming he recognized with a jolt of horror as his own accelerated heartbeat. A blush crept up his neck. A particularly loud firework exploded, and he quickly turned away, pretending to admire the display. His transformation from campus player to devoted boyfriend hadn't gone unnoticed. Soon, he got a call from one of his predecessor's old friends, Derek, from a new number. The voice was slick with sarcasm, asking if Leo was getting addicted to his little game. Leo was about to hang up and block the number again when Derek mentioned he had enough dirt on Leo's past exploits to get him expelled. He told Leo to meet him at their old haunt, a private room at a downtown bar, at 8 o'clock. Leo had no choice. He told Caleb he had a family thing and couldn't have dinner with him. Caleb asked where he was going, but when Leo repeated the lie about his parents, he didn't press further. The bar was dim and smelled of stale smoke and whiskey. Derek and 4 other guys were lounging on the leather couches. They greeted him with mocking cheers. Leo slipped into his old persona, all bored arrogance and impatience. He asked them what they wanted. Derek smirked, asking if he was tired of playing house yet. Leo took a drag from a cigarette he'd bummed, the smoke burning his lungs. He said he'd never tried playing with someone like Caleb before, that the guy treated him like a god for the smallest scrap of attention. It was interesting, he lied, and he was still into it. He told them to stop bothering him. Derek howled with laughter. He said he knew Leo was still the same animal underneath it all. Derek was the one who had made the original bet with Leo's predecessor. The prize was an introduction to Derek's friend, another guy Leo had been chasing. Derek told him the offer still stood once his game was over. Leo crushed his cigarette out on the table, saying the game would be over when he got bored. Derek's smile turned predatory. He suggested that when Leo was done, he and his friends could have a turn, to see what was so special about this kid. A cold fury rose in Leo. He snarled that he didn't like people touching his things. The words were out before he could stop them. The air in the room felt toxic. He stood up, announcing he was leaving. He ignored their jeers as he walked out, a sour taste in his mouth. Logically, setting these hyenas on Caleb was the perfect solution. They would either destroy Caleb or Caleb would destroy them. Either way, Leo would be free. His mind told him it was the smart move, but his heart, or whatever was left of it, rebelled. He found himself worried about Caleb, worried about what these animals would do to him, and worried about what he would do to them in return. The absurdity of it was staggering. He was worried about the man who wanted to kill him. He walked for hours, his thoughts a tangled mess. It was after midnight when he finally returned to his apartment building. He stopped at his door, his blood running cold. A tiny, almost invisible sliver of graphite lay on the floor beneath the hinges. It was from the pencil lead he'd wedged in the door jamb that morning. Primitive alarm system. If the lead was broken, the door had been opened. Someone had been inside. His first thought was Caleb. A new, more urgent fear seized him. He turned and bolted down the stairs, his only thought to get away. He skidded to a halt on the landing below. Caleb was standing there, looking up at him, a serene smile on his face. He asked Leo what was wrong, if he was scared. The beam from Leo's phone flashlight illuminated his pale features. turning them into a ghostly, terrifying mask. The smile seemed to pull at the mole by his lip, an omen of doom. Leo staggered back, his heart trying to beat its way out of his chest. He forced a casual tone, asking Caleb what he was doing there. Caleb ascended the stairs slowly, his eyes never leaving Leo's. He noted how Leo was trying to look calm, but his body was coiled, ready to flee. Caleb's expression softened into something that looked like pity. He told Leo not to be afraid anymore, that they wouldn't be able to threaten him again. He reached Leo's side and, as if presenting a trophy, held out a smartphone. The screen was shattered into a spiderweb of cracks. It was clean, but Leo could see faint, dark stains deep in the crevices. Blood, wiped away but not completely. Leo stared at the phone, his voice a strangled whisper. He asked what Caleb had done to them, reminding him that murder meant prison. The thought of Caleb being locked away filled him with a panic he didn't understand. He wasn't worried for himself anymore. He was worried for Caleb. Caleb looked surprised. Then his face broke into a shy, pleased smile. He reassured Leo that he hadn't done anything permanent, just convinced them to leave him alone. He promised he wouldn't go to jail, that he would never leave Leo. Leo knew then that Caleb had been following him, that he knew about the meeting, about the threats. Caleb's calm was the eerie quiet before a hurricane. The alarm bells in Leo's head were screaming. He tried to persuade Caleb to go home, promising to see him tomorrow. See him tomorrow and then disappear forever. Caleb's smile was knowing and sad. He said no because he was afraid tomorrow might never come. That was it. The time for games was over. Leo spun around and scrambled up the stairs, pure adrenaline coursing through him. He was running for his life. Getting into his apartment was no longer an option. He started banging on his neighbor's door, screaming for help. Caleb was right behind him, his footsteps unnervingly calm. The door didn't open. It was too late, people were asleep. Caleb's arm snaked around his neck, cutting off his air. As his vision tunneled, he thought he saw the neighbor's door crack open, a man's angry face peering out. He heard Caleb's polite voice apologizing, explaining that his boyfriend had had too much to drink. In his docile, harmless-looking state, Caleb was utterly convincing. Leo's last thought before he blacked out was that it was all over. He woke to a searing pain in his neck. He was in his own bed, his hands and feet bound. Caleb was sitting beside him, gently applying a soothing balm to the bruises on his throat. Leo's voice was a raw croak when he asked Caleb what he thought he was doing. Caleb looked at him, his expression softer than ever, as if this twisted scene was the fulfillment of his deepest desire. He just wanted to be with Leo forever, he explained. Leo pleaded with him, promising that if he was untied, he would stay, that they could go back to how they were. Caleb just watched him with his unnervingly serene smile. He said that this was good, too. As long as he had Leo, he was content. There was no reasoning with him. Leo fell back against the pillows, his mind racing. The priority was to stay alive, not to provoke him. In the days that followed, Caleb became the perfect caretaker. He seemed to have a deep-seated need to please, agreeing to every small request Leo made. He cooked for him, read to him, and if Leo disliked a certain food, it never appeared again. Caleb was happy, fulfilled, serving the man he had imprisoned. One evening, after Caleb had helped him wash up, he started to climb into bed. Leo stopped him, asking if he'd put the cream on his forehead. Caleb froze. Leo clicked his tongue, chiding him for not being consistent. A flush of pleasure spread across Caleb's face. He hurried to get the cream, clumsily dabbing it on before leaning in for Leo to inspect, his cheeks pink. He nuzzled against Leo, whispering how much he loved him. After a day of cold silence from Leo, this small act of concern had sent him over the edge with happiness. He peppered Leo's face with kisses, a torrent of loving words pouring out of him. He confessed that Leo was all he had, that they were in love, that Leo had promised never to leave. He said that if Leo left, he would die. He would obey Leo in everything except letting him go. Leo knew this couldn't continue. Caleb never left his side during the day, only venturing out for supplies after he had exhausted Leo into sleep. He needed a plan. The next afternoon, during their post-lunch routine of fruit and television, an idea began to form. Caleb was cutting a melon into heart shapes. He was muttering to himself about how Leo's tastes had changed, how he liked sweet things now, just like him. He held a piece of melon up to Leo's mouth on a fork. Leo took it, but instead of letting go, he bit down gently on the tines, his eyes locking with Caleb's. Caleb froze, confused. Leo slowly released the fork, a suggestive smile playing on his lips. He leaned forward and kissed him, a brief, tantalizing touch. He asked if it was sweet. Caleb stared, his eyes wide with a strange, feverish light. Leo kissed him again, deeper this time, until they were both breathless. He let Caleb push him down onto the bed, Caleb's hands already fumbling with the buttons on his shirt. He stopped him, his voice a ragged whisper. He reminded Caleb of his promise to teach him something more comfortable. He told Caleb to untie his hands so he could show him. Caleb hesitated. Leo pressed his advantage, pointing out that his feet were still tied. He asked if Caleb was really afraid of him. That did it. Caleb untied the ropes around his wrists. As Leo flexed his aching hands, he pulled Caleb into another deep kiss, one hand cradling the back of his head, blocking his view. With his other hand, in one swift, silent motion, he snatched the fruit knife from the nightstand and pressed the cold steel against Caleb's throat. They broke apart, gasping for air. Leo's eyes were blazing. He told Caleb he was reckless. He ordered him to untie his feet and then tie himself up, or he would kill him. Caleb's expression was one of absolute calm. He simply watched him. Leo's hand trembled. Caleb noticed, a gentle smile touching his lips. He told Leo his hands shouldn't shake, that it would make his threat less convincing. The blade nicked his skin, a thin line of red appearing, but Caleb didn't flinch. Leo, enraged, pressed harder, asking if he really thought he wouldn't do it. Caleb's reaction was to tenderly brush a stray lock of hair from Leo's face. He then invited him to do it, to let him die by Leo's hand. Leo was stunned. His mind raced, trying to find a way to incapacitate him, but Caleb seemed to read his thoughts. He whispered that if Leo was going to hold a knife, he had to have the courage to use it. He called Leo too kind. He then laid out the future with chilling certainty. If Leo didn't kill him now, he would just capture him again. As long as he was alive, Leo would never, ever be free. Sweat beaded on Leo's forehead. He stared into Caleb's placid, determined eyes and knew he had lost. With a cry of frustration, he threw the knife across the room. He spat out the word maniac. He couldn't kill him. He wasn't a monster. Caleb's smile returned. He kissed Leo's forehead. He told him that was his last chance. The next time he tried to escape, Caleb would kill him, and then they would die together. His voice was light, as if discussing the weather. He then added that Leo had promised to teach him something, and that it was time to make good on that promise. The next few days were a blur of feigned submission. Leo was a model prisoner, lulling Caleb into a false sense of security with soft words and compliance. He was waiting. The opportunity came when he complained of a sore back, his voice weak and pathetic. He told Caleb he needed medicine. Caleb was reluctant to leave him while he was awake, but Leo insisted, whining that it was Caleb's fault he was in pain. He told him to pick up some fruit while he was out, then pretended to fall into an exhausted sleep. To his surprise, Caleb agreed. Before leaving, he loosened the ropes on Leo's hands, a concession to his comfort. Leo had been planning for this. During one of their desperate kisses, he had managed to palm a small razor blade from the electric shaver on the nightstand and slip it under the edge of the mattress. He waited a full 10 minutes after Caleb left before moving. He worked the blade against the ropes until they frayed and snapped. He freed his feet, grabbed a pair of jeans and a hoodie from the closet, and located his phone. The battery was dead and the SIM card was gone. He grabbed his wallet and was out the door in under 3 minutes. He wrenched it open and froze. Caleb was standing in the hallway, waiting. His expression was placid, but his eyes were black holes. The gentle tone of his voice was the most terrifying thing Leo had ever heard. Leo tried to slam the door, but Caleb's hand shot out, blocking it. He pushed his way inside. Leo scrambled back, a primal scream caught in his throat. This was it. He was going to die. Caleb caught him easily, pulling him into an iron grip. He rested his head on Leo's shoulder, his voice full of a lover's reproach. He lamented that Leo had promised never to leave, asking if he remembered what he'd said would happen. A knife blade pressed against Leo's abdomen. Caleb dragged him in front of the full-length mirror on the closet door, holding him tight, as if trying to merge their bodies into one. Leo was shaking uncontrollably. The searing pain he expected never came. Instead, he heard the clatter of the knife hitting the floor. He looked at their reflection in astonishment. Caleb's head was buried in his neck. His voice was a broken whisper. He was repeating Leo's own words back to him. That love was protection, not harm. That he loved him too much to let him die. He admitted that he knew Leo's kindness was a lie, that he didn't love him back. He then looked at their reflection, his eyes clearing with a strange lucidity, and asked who Leo really was. Was he a new personality? A savior? Leo didn't know how to answer. Caleb didn't seem to need one. He gently kissed Leo's chin. Then he told him to go. Leo stared, unable to believe it. Caleb's eyes were fixed on the floor. He warned him not to keep looking at him or he would change his mind. That was all the motivation Leo needed. He grabbed his wallet and fled. He ran and ran, not daring to look back. Caleb didn't follow. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs gave out. He leaned against a wall, panting, fumbling for his phone to call a cab before remembering it was useless. Then Caleb's other words echoed in his mind. As long as I'm alive, you'll never be free of me. He wouldn't let Leo go. But he wouldn't kill him. The only option left. A horrifying realization dawned. He started running again, back the way he came, his heart pounding with a new and different kind of terror. He burst through the unlocked apartment door. Caleb was on the floor, kneeling in a pool of his own blood, wearing one of Leo's sweatshirts. The front of it was soaked crimson. Leo's mind went blank with shock. He rushed to Caleb's side, his hands hovering, unsure where to touch. Caleb's face was chalk white, his eyes dark and empty until they focused on Leo. He whispered that he thought he was supposed to be in hell, but this felt like heaven. Leo's fear gave way to a surge of furious, helpless anger. He screamed at him, calling him a lunatic, asking him what he was thinking. He found Caleb's phone and dialed 911, his own hands shaking so badly he could barely press the numbers. Caleb watched him, then spoke again. He told Leo he shouldn't have saved him. Leo was crying now, tears of rage and fear. He yelled that he couldn't just leave him there to die, that his conscience wouldn't let him. Before he could say more, Caleb's arms, slick with blood, wrapped around him in a weak embrace. He thanked him for saving him again. Leo felt a wave of profound emotional exhaustion. He let himself be held, too afraid to push Caleb away, too afraid of the self-inflicted wounds that covered his body. He was so lost in his own turmoil that he didn't see it. He didn't see the reflection in the mirror behind them. He didn't see Caleb's face, hidden against his shoulder. He didn't see the faint, triumphant smile that touched Caleb's lips, or the dark, possessive madness that filled his eyes. He whispered it one last time, a vow sealed in blood. I love you, Leo.